So welcome, hello everyone. Welcome to this new talk at the AAAC seminar series. And it's my great pleasure to welcome Ginevra Castellano, that I have known for a very long time. And she is currently a full professor in Intelligent Interactive Systems at the Department of Information Technology, Uppsala University in Sweden. And she founded there the Uppsala Social Robotics Lab that she directs as well. So her current research revolves around social robotics and human-robot interaction, and particularly around trustworthy and ethical interactions and systems. And she is doing quite a bit of research and education, and also supporting children well-being and mental health with social robots. So she's currently coordinating a project on that, and also coordinating the WASP-HS research group on child development in the age of AI and social robotics, that is funded by the Wallenberg AI program. What else to say? I actually remember her for previous work that she did on analysis of human expressive movement, and that was also great. But today she's gonna tell us about her work on that she's been doing for quite a while now on social robotics. And what else can I say? But thank you very much for accepting, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Lola. And indeed, I've grown up as a PhD student in the context of the what was at the time called Humane Association, which now is called the AAAC. So it's really an honor to be here today. And today, as you mentioned, I'm going to talk about some of my research on trustworthy human-robot interaction from my research group, and will primarily address the question of what type of alignment to humans do we need. So today we are witnessing an increased robotization in all areas of society. And until not so long ago, we were used to thinking of robots that would do dull, dirty, and dangerous tasks that we humans could not do or did not want to do. So tools that could do things in a much faster and more automated way. But today robots can do so much more. So we see robots today playing new roles in application where they provide not only physical support to human, but also social support. So today robots are used as tutors and companions for children, instructors in the factories, providers of therapy, and helpers in elderly care. And these robots have a salient features. So to some extent, they resemble humans, even if this resemblance is minimal. They may have a head, a body, and arms. But while a more social and human-like appearance can help robots be more liked by people, it's not sufficient on its own to enable a successful interaction with you. So these robots need to have social skills. They need to be aware that they're interacting with a person. They need to understand the social signals that humans use to communicate. They need to predict people's intentions, make their intentions known to them. They need to understand emotions and respond in a way that is socially appropriate. And I think all of these are familiar concepts to this community. And my research career has been devoted to investigating questions on whether and how machines such as AI-powered robot should embody human qualities in order to successfully interact with humans. So in some of my early work, in collaboration with Yolanda Leite, I show that human-like robot empathy supports long-term relationships with robots. And the EU-funded project Emote, we also show that children are able to recognize empathy in robots. But human-like qualities do not always lead to a better interaction. For example, I work with the fur hat robot, which you see in this picture, showed that people socially react to fur hats even when it has uncanny traits, although uncanniness appear to affect people's ability to connect with the robot in other ways. For example, people are able to mimic fur hat's facial expressions when given the task to mimic the robot, even when the robot displays traits that are associated with uncanniness. At the same time, the more uncanny the robot is, the less people are able to recognize the emotions that are expressed by it. And today we know that AI that is programmed to behave like a human-like entity, for example, programmed to mirror, to imitate, or please humans, can lead to a biased algorithm reflecting the values that only a segment of humanity has prioritized to date. It can lead to AI self-preservation and deceptive behavior and misalignment with human values. It can also lead to alignment of humans to AI, to social digital vulnerability and persuasion. And in fact, we have recently seen that chatbots, psychophancy, may facilitate emotional and psychological dependency. You might remember what happened in summer 2025 when there was an update in OpenAI from the GPT-4o model to the 5 model. And there was really a strong reaction, and people felt that they sort of missed their chatbot companions, as it appears that a lot of people use the chatbots for. In fact, if we look at the Harvard Business Review in 2025, it showed that the top use cases for chatbots in the last year have been therapy and companionship. So this is really important to be aware of. And of course, there are several ongoing efforts to provide guardrails for agentic AI. For example, Benjo and colleagues have proposed a new approach called Science AI, which focuses on understanding the world rather than imitating or pleasing humans. At the same time, if we're thinking about interacting with the robots and social robots like the ones I have shown you earlier and that I work with on a daily basis for our research, social robots have something different. They have a physical body with human-like characteristics, and therefore a higher agency and possibility to change how we humans think and behave. For example, we know that people tend to overtrust robots, can be persuaded by them, and even self-disclose to them. So I think we need to rethink the meaning of human-centered AI in the age of agentic artificial intelligence. And how can we build human-centric robots? Talking about robotics. So what I'm going to do in this talk is to suggest that we need to go beyond human likeness. The EU ethics guidelines for trustworthy AI, which were one of the bases for the AI Act, state 7 requirements to achieve a trustworthy AI. So an AI that is lawful, ethical, and robust. So these include requirements such as human agency and oversight, technical robustness and safety, privacy and data governance, transparency, diversity, non-discrimination and fairness, societal and environmental well-being, and accountability. So to build human-centric robots, we need to take a responsible approach and design robots with ethical values in mind, following, for example, guidelines such as this. And that is a way to build robots for the societal good, for the good of society. So if we think a little bit more about, so what do we mean with advancing social robots for good? What does it mean to build robots for the good of society? So this is one definition. Advancing social robots for good means building robots that have measurable benefits for users, but also identifying and limiting possible negative consequences. And I'm going to explain this by showing some examples from my research team's work in different application areas. So I will start with social robots in education and give examples of what advancing social robots for good in education means. Social robots have shown promising results in education, facilitating children's learning of STEM topics, second language learning, reading, to name a few, in the classroom or at home as a support for teachers and for parents. And my research groups has been working on social robots that support children's learning for several years, and we know that social robots can do good for children's learning. But what is good really? And how can we avoid situations where robots might not go good? So in the Animatas project, in collaboration with colleagues at the KTH and Royal Institute of Technology and Instituto Superior Técnico Lisbon, we explore how to develop robot storytellers that support primary school children to create stories and develop verbal creativity. And we investigated how an EMIS robot, like you see in this video, how an EMIS robot could do that by inducing emotions through a collaborative game. And what we found is that when positive emotions are induced by the robot, children's creativity is higher. We also developed a similar storytelling application with the Furhat robot, which is a robot made by Furhat Robotics. And here we were interested in understanding if children form a relationship with the robot, if they trust the robot. And we can make this robot look differently because it's half physical, half virtual, so you can project different virtual faces onto it. So this robot can look more like a human, for example, the example on the left, or have a more machine-like look on your right. What we found was that children have a general tendency to trust the robot, and they also disclose information with it, at least with the robot that looks more machine-like. But while this trust, this connection, or even intimacy can be good for a robot that plays a supportive role for children, we also need to ask ourselves, is there a point at which a robot can foster too much trust, too much connection, too much intimacy? So I mentioned earlier the risk of the strong risk of emotional and psychological dependency that is arising now with the latest chatbot. So the answer to this question depends on several things. For example, it depends on who controls the robot. It depends on the presence of an adult overseeing the robot's use and making judgment calls. It depends on the robot's ability to be transparent and properly communicate what it can't and what it can't do. And it depends on things such as the data that the robot's dialogue ability are trained with. So this should be considered, this kind of question should be considered for all AI and all technology, but as mentioned before, robots have physical body and therefore a higher agency, so higher chance to affect how we think and behave. And that means that possible negative consequences should be considered even more closely. Now, I will give you another example from a research on social robots in education. And specifically here, I'm going to address the questions of, can we use social robots to build more equitable STEM education? So we know that the educational outcomes for students belonging to disadvantaged groups are influenced by systems of inequity, which arise along lines such as gender, ethnicity, and age. And very human-like robots like Furhat enable us to choose characteristics in how a robot looks that cue for social identities like this. So we do have a strong responsibility as roboticists and designers in using this in a way that is socially harmonious. So in the STEM education context, the strategies for tackling such inequities include, among others, restructuring the educational environments to be more inclusive, and exposing kids to diverse role models. So we think that a diverse design in how a robot looks might have the potential to have positive social change, and also to challenge inequities, and also to build a more trustworthy robots. So we ran a study and provided a classroom lecture on machine learning and algorithmic bias to kids that were 9 to 12 years old, using a team of 3 human-like robots, while varying the gender and ethnic diversity of the teams. And we found that children placed higher trust in the high gender diverse team. So we think that human-like features in robots can present incredible opportunities. So in this case, the potential to disrupt harmful stereotypes in STEM education. At the same time, is human likeness a double-edged sword? Can it be harmful? Well, if used inappropriately, the risk is to actually reinforce harmful norms, to harm disadvantaged groups. So again, we roboticists have a big responsibility in how we use it. Now I'm going to switch to application area. I'm going to talk about our work on social robots in the context of mental health care, and specifically social robots to support screening of perinatal depression. So first of all, what is perinatal depression? Perinatal depression is a mental health disorder with high societal costs, which affects as many as 20% of women during pregnancy or after childbirth. And a clinical diagnosis is required to receive treatment. The problem is that access to skilled personnel can vary, and also screening is not offered to all women. This results in up to 50 to 70% of cases going undetected. So here is what the situation in Sweden looks like when it comes to maternal care and perinatal depression. A study showed that 70% of mothers were offered perinatal depression screening 6 to 8 weeks after birth. So there is no screening during pregnancy. Only 70% of women receive this screening after birth, around 6 to 8 weeks. So there are big gaps when it comes to screening. So what is good in this context? So we are talking about identifying benefits clear benefits for users. It's good if mothers are made aware of perinatal depression, because awareness is very low. Good is that mothers are offered perinatal depression screening in both pregnancy and after childbirth. So good is that mothers are screened and diagnosed without delay. And in general, good is that more perinatal depression cases are detected. So we investigated the question on whether social robots can be used to raise awareness of perinatal depression and help with the screening of it. So how can social robots support clinicians? Does it even make sense? So we explored this question by conducting research at the boundaries of different disciplines. So human-robot interaction, first of all, perinatal depression, gender studies, and sociology of law. And we have conducted a series of interview studies to gather different stakeholders' perspective on the possible role of robots in the context of perinatal depression screening. So interview psychiatrists, perinatal depression experts, and gender scholars. And we interviewed mothers with previous experience of perinatal depression. So I'm going to show some examples of the results that we got. So if we look at the responses from psychiatrists, perinatal depression, and experts and gender scholars. So they thought that social robots would be good when there are unmet needs for trained clinicians to perform the screening, to save time for screening. Robots would be good to assist, but not replace humans. And then something that was pointed out by the gender scholars, they thought that social robots could be good in less stigmatized contexts, especially outside of the medical institutions. For example, in structures that support mothers beyond the healthcare system. But there was also concern when it comes, for example, loss of jobs. Now, when we interviewed instead mothers with previous experience of perinatal depression, we received very different opinions. So we found very, very, very different reactions. So some of them thought that screening performed by a robot might be good because they feel they might open up more with the robot, as they feel that in doing so that might avoid human judgment. Some also thought that social robots could be useful to raise awareness of perinatal depression within and outside of the medical institution, wherever there is a lack of information or a lack of healthcare personnel. At the same time, women commented that robots should be used to assist and not replace clinicians. There should always be human oversight somewhere in the process. And some women even had very negative reactions, citing fears of feeling abandoned by the healthcare system. So very, very different opinions. So some were more open to try this, and others were very much against. So we see really an ambivalence in the attitudes. And so we also need to ask ourselves an important question. So we're talking about good, but are there goods here that potentially could be in conflict? What is good for a patient may not be good for another one. Or what is good for the healthcare system may not be good for clinicians and may not be good for patients. So a broader and more important questions here is how can we ethically integrate robots in perinatal depression screening? And do we even need to do that at all? So how can we use social robots to support caregivers while at the same time avoiding, replace, or reducing the number of humans? And I will continue with another study, which is still within the healthcare domain, but now I'm going to talk about family healthcare robots and cybersecurity. So robots are becoming more capable and connected, but at the same time also potentially more vulnerable to cybersecurity attacks. So when robots become a part of users' daily life in a home setting, for example, we'll have interaction involving significant information exchange with multiple individuals, including, for example, household members, family caregivers, and doctors. So there is also the potential for internal interference in addition to external one. So in this work, we investigate what happens when a family healthcare robot contradicts human memory. How do people react? So we run an online study where participants watch videos of a fictional family healthcare robot providing advice and reminders. So let's see.
Sorry, Ginevra, are we supposed to be hearing the robot?
Yes, you're not hearing the
No.
robot. Okay. Yeah, so what basically is happening is that the robot is reminding the user to take medication at a certain time, and the user reflects on the fact that they remember something differently. So there is a deliberate mismatch between the time remembered by the user and the time suggested by the robot. So yes. So we had 4 conditions in this study and 2 independent variables: transparency and sociability of the robot. For transparency, for example, when the user says, as was saying in the video and probably didn't hear, thanks for the reminder. Wait, 4 p.m.? I think my medication time in the afternoon is supposed to be at 5 p.m. So in this case, a robot with low transparency would answer, no, it's at 4 p.m. Instead, a robot in the high transparency condition would answer, let me check. According to my system records, your medication schedule was modified 2 hours ago through your iPad using the family sharing account. Now, the latest schedule shows that your afternoon medication time is at 4 p.m. Instead, we had also 2 conditions for the robot sociability. So the low sociability robot was providing neutral short answers, was not asking any follow-up questions. Instead, the more social robot would display more verbal and non-verbal behaviors to make the robot to look more empathetic, or use memory, introduce itself during greetings. And what we found is that the decision-making of the participants, when asked at what time they would take the medicine, was independent of transparency and sociability levels, with users having a significant preference for the robot's recommendation. We also asked participants what they thought the reason behind the discrepancy was. For example, if it was user-related, perhaps the user had forgot. If it was robot-related, if the time was modified by others in the family, if this instead was due to block changes. So for those participants who said that they would follow the robot's recommendation, the interpretations of the reason behind the mismatch in time did not necessarily predict their actions. So what we actually seen was that overall, there is overtrust in the robots. Overall, participants follow the robot even when suspecting malfunction or interference. And we also found that those who follow the robot tended to report higher trust in the robot than those who relied on memory. But differences here were not significant. So what do we learn here? So the takeaway messages are that family healthcare robots should support multiple family members while protecting privacy and prevent unintended modifications. And they should also adjust transparency in a way that helps users detect and interpret unexpected behaviors, such as errors, malfunctions, or cybersecurity threats. And my last example is from another application. So now I'm going to talk about autonomous vehicles, so intelligent transportation systems. So the question here was, how can we build trustworthy autonomous vehicle? In the EU-funded SimAware project, we use participatory design methods to collect people's view on what characteristics an autonomous vehicle should have in different situations in order to be perceived as trustworthy. So here we refer again to the EU ethics guidelines for trustworthy AI, and we focus specifically on the requirement of preserving human agency and oversight. So the question we were interested in was what level of autonomy should the vehicle have in order to be perceived as trustworthy. So we asked over 200 participants in an online study to tell us under different circumstances how much level of autonomy they would like the autonomous vehicle to have. So in other words, how much they would like to be in control. And we looked at different situations in a highway and in suburban scenarios with participants asked to imagine themselves in the role of a driver in a car with advanced driver assistance. And we had different scenes with a role play like narration of what happens and prompts for participants to select between multiple actions corresponding to different levels of autonomy. So what we found was that people would trust less and would prefer to give less autonomy to a vehicle in the highway scenario. We also find that the level of information available to participants about the situation, for example, interface design elements, for example, GPS speed, or more detailed information such as list of surrounding objects and distance from them. So the level of information provided to people did not affect their choices when it comes to the level of autonomy. However, it did affect trust, with trust being higher when the level of information provided was higher. Overall, we also found that the less negative attitudes users have, the greater their trust and the more comfortable they would be with the vehicle having a higher level of autonomy. So while we may have robots soon freeing up time or effort from humans during driving, how do we make sure to preserve their human agency and their oversight to preserve their dignity of individuals? And these questions are linked to issues of safety, accountability, and regulation. So we need more discussions about this. So we need more regulation, but also more research taking into account that people have different attitudes to technology. AI and robots, as we have also seen in other examples in other applications earlier. And these results are based on an online study. So a study where participants are not really sitting in a vehicle. But at the same time, what we're seeing is the emergence of a research methodology called the science fiction science, which allows researchers to study potential acceptance and other issues around the technology before the technology is actually mature and deployed. And that is becoming increasingly important for things such as foresight exercises and proactive regulation efforts. So now, going back to the key question of the talk, from human-like to human-centric robots, what type of alignment to humans do we need? So we need the AI alignment, which is about ensuring that AI systems act in accordance with shared human values and ethical principles. However, scholars such as Shannon Valor warn about the dangers of value alignment. So first of all, so what human values? We know that AI today reflects the values that only a segment of humanity has prioritized to date, for example, efficiency or productivity. And these are all aligned with a very specific global socio-technical order. At the same time, we know that human values are not uniforms across regions. They're not uniform across cultures. So AI systems really must be tailored to very specific cultural, legal, and social contexts. And Valor also mentions that we may also need other values. For example, the compassionate virtues of care and service, which are as she mentions in her book, The AI Mirror, are overdue to be revalorized and adapted for humanity's future needs. So what is our way forward? If we want to truly build robots for the societal good, so we need to take a responsible approach and design robots with ethical values in mind. We need to promote virtues and skills. They may better meet the needs of the future society. Think, for example, about social emotional skills, empathy, care, cooperation, communication, instead of or together with efficiency and productivity. We need to produce standards for principles of trustworthy human-robot interaction that really work in practice. So we need to work towards an operationalization of ethical guidelines. We need to regulate possible negative consequences. We need guiding principles for AI policy research frameworks that support the ethical and effective integration of AI into society. We need more interdisciplinary discussions with society stakeholders and need more foresight exercises. And we need to ask defining questions on what it means to build robots for good. And I would like to end this talk reading the quote from Shannon Valor's book, and this is how she ends her book, The AI Mirror. The true soul of technology is not efficiency, but generosity. It is the gift of a future. To perform the necessary services for others to survive, to shield them from harm, to repair and heal, to educate and train, to feed, nurture, and comfort. AI can be remade for a humane future, reconceived as a tool for these ends, measured and valued only to the extent that it can be proven to serve them, if we choose, if we demand. And I'd like to leave you with this for your reflection. And this is the end of my talk. And of course, all of this work I've done was together with several collaborators and some of my wonderful PhD students and postdocs at the Uppsala Social Robotics Lab. And so you're welcome to visit our website or wish to learn more. And thank you very much, and looking forward to the discussion.
Thank you very much, Ginevra. I think we can all clap for this really, really excellent talk that, you know, I think we all agree that we want robots for good, but you really have made us think of how difficult that is, how naive we can be when we, you know, wish social robots for good, and there are so many issues to take into account. So what I'm going to do, I always do this, I'm going to stop the recording now so that people can ask questions more freely, and then people can either, oh, okay.